James Bond is back, and the latest Bond girl is none other than Billie Eilish. Well, not Bond girl exactly, but she does have the high honor of performing the latest theme song from this iconic film series. How does her track rank among a long list of classics? I'm counting down the top 10 James Bond movie theme songs next on Track by Track. Hey everybody, my name's Kyle and this is Track by Track, music reviews, news, and commentary. Thanks for tuning in today. If this is your first time here, please take a second to click subscribe so that you won't miss future reviews and more. I miss the days of movie theme songs. Now, I'm not talking about movie soundtracks here. We still get a lot of those, though not as many as we used to. No, what I'm talking about here is the lost art of movies having one song, usually a title song, that not only opened the film, but often had a life of its own. Heck, sometimes those theme songs were better than the movies themselves. Of course, there's one movie franchise that to this day continues the movie theme song tradition, and that's Bond. James Bond. Beginning with 007's second outing in 1963's From Russia with Love, every James Bond film has had its own theme song. This year's release of No Time to Die, the 25th film in the ongoing series, is no exception. In fact, I think it's fair to say that there's almost as much anticipation in hearing a new James Bond movie theme as there is in seeing a new James Bond film. There's a lot of status and bragging rights for an artist selected to perform a James Bond theme song. So every time one is announced, the world perks up its collective ears. So when you consider the ubiquity of current music superstar and recent Grammy winner for Best New Artist Billie Eilish, it's not much of a surprise to hear that she's been granted 00 status for the latest entry in the legendary saga. Eilish's No Time to Die theme song doesn't stray far from the well-worn path of recent Bond themes. Melodically, it's very similar to Sam Smith's Writings on the Wall from Spectre 5 years ago, not to mention Adele's Skyfall from 2012. I suppose that's par for the course, though, as most contemporary Bond theme songs tend to borrow heavily from the melodic themes of the film's scores. To that end, composer David Arnold deserves an enormous amount of credit, as he's literally set the musical tone for every James Bond film of the last 20-plus years. Even though he hasn't been part of Her Majesty's Secret Service since Quantum of Solace, the composers and songwriters that have worked on the films that followed have hewed closely to Arnold's excellent and well-established tonal palette. Getting back to Billie Eilish, though, I have to admit I was a bit underwhelmed by her take on No Time to Die. Far from it being a bad song, as songs go in general, the problem that I have with it has more to do with its lofty role as a James Bond theme song. Yes, it has several of the standard melodic themes we've come to expect, and there's plenty of ominous and foreboding imagery in the lyrics. But to my ear, the song lacks the kind of deep passion and drive that are hallmarks of the best songs from the series. Now, to be fair, the film isn't out yet, so I don't know how the song itself may relate to the characters or the story, if at all. You know, one of the sometimes used motifs of Bond songs is to have them kind of sung from the perspective of 007's love interest. Is that how we should interpret Eilish's persona on No Time to Die? Quite possibly, yes. Still, the melancholy of the track feels far too overbearing to me in the context of being a James Bond theme. That's an important distinction here, because while I would say that the song falls short of what some may want in a Bond theme, it probably delivers exactly what fans of Billie Eilish would want to hear based on what's made her so successful. Needless to say, No Time to Die is not one of my favorite James Bond theme songs, and while I certainly would not rank it among my top 10, I wouldn't put it at the bottom of the list either. Now, I don't want to do a full 24-song breakdown of every Bond theme to date, but what I will do for you is share my own personal top 10. And when I think about my top 10 Bond songs, cultural timing and their relative place in the ongoing saga have almost as strong an influence as my own personal taste. There's no better example of that than the song that I'm ranking at number 10 on my list, and that's You Know My Name by the late, great Chris Cornell. As rock and roll Bond themes go, this one is arguably the heaviest of them all. It definitely marked a stark sonic change from Madonna's electropop theme from Die Another Day 4 years earlier. But most importantly, it echoed a huge change that was happening in the film series itself. Cornell's song was the theme to Casino Royale, which was, of course, Daniel Craig's first outing as the legendary super spy. At this point in the franchise's history, the gritty, visceral style of the Jason Bourne films had upped the ante on what would be expected from action heroes. Craig's James Bond would be quite different from his predecessors, if not decidedly darker, while still retaining many of the character's core attributes. To that end, Chris Cornell's theme does a great job setting expectations, that though the face has changed, the coldest blood still runs through his veins. You know his name. Next up on my list is The World Is Not Enough by Garbage. This song comes from the beginning of composer David Arnold's run with the franchise, and he's a co-writer on the theme song as well. That goes a long way toward giving the track an undeniably cinematic feel that instantly transports you into the 00 world of mystery and intrigue. It feels exotic and global in the same ways that so many of the films also do. And while the film it comes from may not be one of the best in the series, at least we can say things start off promising. A minute ago I talked about how important it was to have a great song to accompany the changing of the guard that happened in Casino Royale, and we find a similar thing happening with GoldenEye. Pierce Brosnan was overdue to play James Bond when his film came out in 1995. His TV contract for Remington Steele had prevented him from earning his license to kill earlier than this. Still, as the series made an iconic shift, it made sense to have an iconic voice help to fuel that transition. Tina Turner was more than up to the task. She brought the best qualities of some of the classic Bond song singers to her performance. And truth be told, she may very well have been more of a badass than Brosnan. Am I wrong? Speaking of classic Bond singers, there is probably no one performer more associated with the series than Shirley Bassey, the only singer to perform not one, not two, but 3 of the long-running series theme songs. With Diamonds Are Forever, this powerhouse singer created the perfect sultry single to lead off what would be Sean Connery's final official mission as 007. And while Shirley Bassey is best known for her musical contributions to the Bond films, the rest of her music is well worth seeking out too. Plus, check out her featured performance on History Repeating by Propellerheads. Really great stuff. And then there's Tom Jones. Now, there's no denying the guy's larger-than-life persona during the 60s and 70s has in many ways overshadowed his musical legacy, which, it must also be said, was very much of its time. But in that context, his theme from 1965's Thunderball has a swagger to it that only James Bond himself could rival. I mean, think about it. Can you imagine a Billie Eilish Bond song containing the lyric, "Any woman he wants, he'll get"? Well, in the hashtag #MeToo era, even James Bond may need to keep his machismo in check. But in the mid-60s, when both James Bond and Tom Jones were both well accustomed to women dropping panties for them, this brazen theme song felt entirely apropos. Now let's jump ahead to 2012 and what I'd consider to be the best of the recent Daniel Craig Bond themes. One has to think that writing a song based on a film's title can sometimes be challenging. And while Skyfall may not be as tricky a title as some other Bond films, I have to think that Adele may have cringed at first upon hearing what she had to work with. Still, here's a singer that was quite simply born to sing a James Bond theme song. Adele could have even made a song for Octopussy sound good. And on Skyfall, she delivers exactly what you'd expect. It's a song that has so many of the epic characteristics of the best Bond themes delivered by one of the best female vocalists of our time. I'd like to think that sentimentality doesn't necessarily play a part in my choices on this list, but I'm sure it influenced me with Sheena Easton's For Your Eyes Only. Released in 1981, this was the first James Bond movie that I saw in the theater, and it was the first Bond theme song that came out during my formative years as a young pop radio listener. There's no doubt the song's age is showing when we listen to it today, but that could be said of quite a few of the series' theme songs. Here we had Roger Moore's legendary super spy in his first adventure of a new decade, and sonically speaking, Sheena Easton's song sets the tone perfectly. Coming in at number 3 on my list is a song that I found to be a bit of a love it or hate it sort of affair, and that's Live and Let Die by Paul McCartney and Wings. Personally, I'm in the love it camp on this one. While I might not place it as high on my list of the best McCartney songs, I think it works brilliantly as a Bond theme. I love the bombasticness of the whole thing. Just like a James Bond movie, the song seems to go from 0 to 100 and back almost without warning. It was a bold choice, and at the time also the most rock and roll Bond song ever, not to mention signaling Roger Moore's first mission. My second favorite James Bond theme song, in all fairness, could probably top my list if we took the Bond part out of the equation. Nobody Does It Better is quite simply wonderful. Carly Simon has a discography full of incredible songs, and for my money, this is one of her best. In the universe of James Bond, though, Simon was one of the few to forego using the film's title as a musical centerpiece. The Spy Who Loved Me is in the lyric, of course, but the true theme of the song is all about paying tribute to someone who's, as the song says, the best. Nobody does it better than Carly Simon. Well, maybe one person does it better, but before I reveal my choice for the best James Bond theme, let's quickly run through all the songs that didn't make it into my top 10. Now, I'm going to list these in order of release, so don't take this as a countdown. Going back to the very first James Bond movie, there was no actual theme song from 1962's Dr. No. The film did introduce us to the iconic instrumental, though, appropriately titled James Bond Theme. It deserves special note, of course, but for the purpose of our list, it's not really a song. The first true James Bond theme song was From Russia with Love by Matt Monro. Then there's You Only Live Twice by Nancy Sinatra. We Have All the Time in the World by Louis Armstrong from George Lazenby's only appearance as James Bond in On Her Majesty's Secret Service. Next is The Man with the Golden Gun by Lulu, followed by Shirley Bassey's Moonraker. In 1983, Rita Coolidge gave us All Time High from Octopussy. Then pop rock themes took over with Duran Duran's A View to a Kill and The Living Daylights by Aha. Gladys Knight brought us License to Kill, Sheryl Crow sang Tomorrow Never Dies, and Madonna delivered Die Another Day. Rather than even attempt to write a song with the lyrics Quantum of Solace, Jack White and Alicia Keys gave us the first Bond-themed duet with Another Way to Die. Sam Smith sang Writings on the Wall for Spectre, and finally we get Billie Eilish on No Time to Die. Alright, so now it's time for my pick for the #1 James Bond movie theme song, and come on, how can it not be Goldfinger by Shirley Bassey? This may have been the third movie in the series, but this is truly where the James Bond mythology lays its strongest foundation. Goldfinger is arguably the best entry in the entire series of films, and it's perfectly highlighted by its groundbreaking theme song. Just listen to that intense blast of horns at the start of the song, followed in contrast by muted echoes just moments later, shifting from menace to sensuality as smoothly as Sean Connery. Composer John Barry co-wrote the song and truly established the sound of James Bond for the next decade, if not for the entirety of the series. And what more can I say about Shirley Bassey? She positively owns it here. I mean, she's singing about the villain, for God's sake. The dude's name is Goldfinger. I mean, today we're like, yeah, Goldfinger. But you have to imagine people in 1964 being like, Goldfinger? I'm sure any innuendo that was inferred was intentional, especially when you consider that the love interest in the film was named Pussy Galore. In every way, Goldfinger sets the gold standard for the James Bond franchise, and Shirley Bassey has deservedly become as iconic a character in the series as Q, M, and Miss Moneypenny. So there you have it, the top 10 James Bond movie theme songs. We've spanned almost 60 years of film and music, touching on almost every cinematic era of the world's most famous secret agent. Many of those songs have become as iconic as the films that inspired them. This year's No Time to Die is slated to be the final chapter in the Daniel Craig era, and we can only speculate who will achieve 00 status next. But one thing I think we know for sure is this: James Bond theme songs will return. Once again, my name is Kyle, and this has been Track by Track. If you like this video, please be sure to give it a thumbs up. Plus, check out some of these other videos below that I think you might also enjoy. And of course, be sure to click subscribe, because true music fans always want new releases the day they come out. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.